I'd like to call this Citizens Budget Review Advisory Committee meeting to order on August the 6th at 6 p.m. All please stand and we'll start with the pledge. Let's have a roll call, please.
Mr. Napier?
Here.
Mr. Herlihy?
Here.
Mr. Hoffman?
Here.
Mr. Hall?
Here.
Ms. Ring? Here. Ms. Veet?
Here.
And Mr. Frank has been excused.
He's excused, right?
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the meeting of July 9th. Did everybody have a chance to look at them?
One question.
Yes.
Page 2. Ken, help me out here, make sure I'm correct. Under 5A, the second paragraph, the line below the DR 420, shouldn't that be 3.4 also?
That's correct. Where it says 4.3 currently, it should be 3.4.
Should be 3.4, right? So
Scrivener's error. We can make that
right.
change.
So I would move approval with that correction.
Second. All those in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign. Motion passes unanimously. Unfinished business, budget update by Ken Kilgore, CFO. Ken, you're on.
Thank you. Budget's rolling along. We did post an updated draft to the website just this last Friday evening. So I just wanted to give you kind of a quick briefing on the only changes really from the previous edition, other than some small mathematical kind of mistakes or whatever. But we did get the negotiated price on the group insurance for the employees, and that came in at a 5% increase. So that enabled us to make some other minor corrections and still end up then with $118,000 that we are setting up in what we're calling a special project contingency account. Because we anticipate that with all the concerns about whether we're spending enough on stormwater and roads, that this may give some assistance if something happens during our budget approval process or happens during the year next year that we need to or desire to apply additional funding there. So we did have that. We have set up negotiation meetings starting next week. That was just a recent event. We were waiting basically for them to raise their hand and say they would like to talk to us. Other than that, the staffing changes, there's no difference as far as the general fund budget goes. For the local option gas tax, we got a surprise, actually just last week, from the railroad. They notified us that the Schumann Avenue Railroad crossing was going to have some extensive repairs, $59,000. As we've been charging railroad repairs to the local option gas tax fund, we wanted to fit that into the current edition of that budget. So we did adjust against the road work line item. Still leaves $401,100 for road work, plus $100,000 for Indian River Drive improvements. And we did slightly reduce the amounts we had allocated for sidewalks and some signage, those kind of things, to make the budget still stay in balance for the gas tax fund. As far as all the other funds, the enterprise funds and the stormwater fund, the adjustments were made for the health insurance in the latest edition, but as with the general fund, we haven't adjusted for any kind of wage change. My thinking is that, without any kind of significant change in what y'all have considered before, I'm kind of thinking this would be our last discussion on the budget. unless the city council should, when they meet, actually this Wednesday night, I'll be briefing them with a PowerPoint and going through pretty much the same slides I had gone through the committee. Unless there's some surprises or differences or something that's drastically different, I think we probably can call our work done. We do have the budget balance at 3.1514 rollback rate. So I had really no further update on that unless y'all have questions.
Yeah, Ken, I have one. So explain to me the difference. Yeah, it's on, yeah. Explain, if you would, the difference between, and I'm reading this, special project contingency account and the R&R account. How would they differ?
Well, the R&R was specifically for unexpected items that came up that we were all of a sudden going to have to repair or replace. In other words, things that broke. Special projects is oriented towards supplementing monies we might have for either road work or stormwater improvements as opposed to just patchwork.
So is that specifically defined that way? Has it been delineated, or is this just a definition that suddenly we could change if we need to?
I don't think it would change our intent of it. From staff's point of view, you know, that's what we had in mind when we looked at the savings on the insurance, and we said, well, shall we reduce revenue projection? Should we supplement some other budget?
You could always designate that in your fund balance, and it would restrict it just for that use. The council always has the option of designating it so it could only be used for that and not be changed unless they changed it.
I know, it just seems that we're moving towards creating more funds than what we need. Maybe we should be, okay. One other question, and maybe I missed this when we had our big discussions. If the building department is moving to, you know, we've seen a decrease in the amount of permits and requests and things, is that correct? Why do we need another 1.5 employees if the building is going to drive, the number of building activity and the permits are
Well,
decreasing?
several things have gone on there. You know, you recall the fire marshal activity was absorbed this year by the building department.
Correct, but I think the answer at the prior meeting was that was already in place. That.
Well, it is, but the way it's being handled is from the building official.
Oh, so we're going to have someone assist or...
Well, with a small department like his, when someone was on vacation or out ill and inspections needed to be done, I mean, he was able to step in and do some of those inspections, you know, be out in the field as opposed to just being in the office. So we need that supplement, that kind of additional support to continue both current activities and add the fire marshal. Plus, we've got the annexations that are being considered by the city council and the impact those additional developments will be needing inspections. So by the time we get someone on board and get them up to speed and let them carry a full load, I'm sure there's going to be ample work to be done.
Thank you.
Ken, along the same line, do you know, are we firm that we're going to have the fire marshal here, that it's going to be in the city? Is that?
That is the city's position, that we do have it.
Okay. But you don't, there's no update, nothing as far as?
I have no information on,
okay,
on that status, no.
Thanks. By the way, are we sure that the number of permits is going down? I didn't think so. I didn't get that impression.
I think it's been flat. I don't know that it's really been any particular drop in permits.
I mean, the number of just driving around town,
No, you know, last year we did experience a spike,
Well,
quite
some
a-
of that
quite a bit of
problem, some of that probably was commercial,
So I think a lot of the spike was commercial.
but you drive around this town and the number of houses being built,
Well, you
they
are
pop
correct.
up everywhere.
Well, Ken is correct. The annexation will certainly, keep the building permit issue flowing for a while now.
Well, if you look at what's going on over by the post office, I've forgotten what that's called, Chuck Mecklin's thing over there has apparently blossomed much more than they thought, because they're into phase 2 now, which they didn't think they were going to be in for a little while. And I'm gathering that he's going full steam on this new 180-acre thing. So he may be building there next year, conceivably.
Yeah, in fact, when you look at or when we discuss the quarterly report, maybe I'll come back to this, but the building department's comments on the very last page of the third quarter report, they're talking about 53 single-family home permits, new single-family residence permits continue to rise. So, you know, I think maybe what Bruce is recalling is when we looked at the budget projections for next year, we didn't really anticipate any big bump in what the current year is.
Yeah, maybe leveling off is a better word, okay. But I can see the annexation project definitely requiring some attention.
Any comments, questions here?
Yes, I have a question. Ken, I looked at your attachment that you sent out. I didn't print it out because it's pretty voluminous. But I had a question on the unrestricted fund balance. Is the estimate, is that approaching higher end of $4 million? Did we get an influx of FEMA funds, or did you accrue the anticipation of FEMA funds?
We were lucky enough back in April to get about $1.4 million in FEMA recoveries from Hurricane Matthew.
Okay.
Our fund balance was down into around the 3.6, 3.7 available fund range, and so that's brought it back up to almost $5 million, or pretty close to $5 million.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you.
Yeah, I feel much relieved going into the new season with that. So, and I'm still working on the other FEMA, you know, the balances, and I can only report just very slow progress. I mean, I get them to take it to the next step or forward it to the next review process, but we're still maybe months away from any additional actual cash received.
Victoria?
I do have a question too about the special fund. We can't stop council from spending it any way they want, is that correct? Even though we might try to delineate it, council can spend money? Because last year, you know, we were talking about trying to do funds last year, and I was told, you know, that council, we can't fence anything in. We were talking about making funds for the homestead, the part that we were gonna, you know, lose money because of homestead, and we were gonna try to make some funds for that. And the council said, no, we can't fence it in. So I don't understand how this new fund can be fenced in. Or can it? This council can spend it.
Well, this new contingency account is only staff's recommendation at this point. Council's option, I mean, if they have the same type of comments as we've heard tonight about let's not have additional accounts, then that might be changed.
Oh, okay.
I mean, they do have the final say on the purse strings, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that it? Public input. I see no general members of the public here, so I assume there is none. New business, review of the third quarter financial report. Ken, you're on again.
Okay, Same format as we've had in the past quarters. I am looking for ideas or suggestions, if anyone has any, that maybe different information you want to be seeing in these kind of quarterly reports, or if you think some of it should be eliminated for the sake of not distracting people from things that aren't important. I don't know. I'm going to try to do some samples from other cities, those kind of things. It's not going to happen overnight, but I'd like to maybe do a better job. I don't feel like this is really maybe user-friendly as it could be, so. But with that said, the budget resolution that we're presenting this time, we are going to catch up on some things that happened this year that affected the budget, so we need additional appropriations in the police department. Part of it is because of the pension payment, investment performance wasn't as good as projected, so we ended up having a higher contribution to the pension plan than anticipated. Plus, it seems their overtime accounts were under budgeted, essentially because of absences where we had to fill in and bring people in on overtime to cover the existing shifts. This is really beyond the time of the hurricane, so it's not really the hurricane overtime, but felt like we needed to add some funds to their budget, and also we took care of the payouts that we made to the prior city manager for his leave time and so forth that impacted the city manager's department. As I mentioned, I'm still trying to move along the Matthew and Hurricane Irma reimbursements. There's about $142,000 I still think we might recover from Matthew, and so far, the tally on Irma is about over $600,000 that we should be able to put together and ultimately receive at least a large percentage of that. I feel fine with the department expenditures are 76%. We've only got the last 3 months of the quarter, and I'm projecting that we'll spend probably about 97% or in that budget range, which is pretty standard for what we've been experiencing. I think revenues have come in slightly over, probably not by a lot more than budget. And that's mostly because we've been successful with receipts from half-cent sales tax and also our franchise fees. So, as far as projects, we always look at those and say, well, why do we have so many? There's still several from prior years. Why can't we get them cleaned up? Well, I'm thinking by the time we carry over at the end of this year that we're going to have just a minimum number of carry forwards. There's I'm sure less than a half a dozen. We do have some of those pots of money, as we refer to them, the monies that were allocated into a project for sewer connections is the biggest example where we've got those funds that we typically carry over, and so that we can track total inflows and outflows of of that spending. Otherwise, I'd open it up for any questions, concerns, or like I say, if you've got ideas that I might be wanting to consider on any changes, I'd love to hear that.
Andrea, we'll start down with you. You got any questions or comments about the third quarter financial report?
No, thank you.
Harry?
Yes, a couple. Ken, when I look at the information you provide, there's a lot of material there. A lot of it I really don't pay that much attention to, but some of the ones like the adjustments, and there's a slight comment there like so many thousands of dollars for miscellaneous items in IT. Could we get a little more information as to why there was an adjustment for an item? Anything that's out of the ordinary like that, personally, I would like to see a little more detail as to what it is. And if there's several items in there, say IT, I'm just using IT. I could use any other department. If it shows up more than once, could it be just one line item. I don't want to have to search through it and say, okay, IT was here for 13,000 and 14 here, and when you add it up, it comes up to a large number, but individually, it doesn't look like much when you glance through it. And it's some short explanation as to why it's an adjustment and not a normal expenditure.
I think your point is well taken. I will try to work on that.
Thank you.
Well, adjustment will be something that you do either administratively with the city manager or something that council does during the quarter, correct?
Yeah, it's more of a full disclosure kind of thing. It's not that we're really seeking approval, but I know what you're saying. If you see half a dozen adjustments to a particular department to adjust accounts for budget overages or whatever, it doesn't leave you much knowledge of it, if there's a problem in that area or what, yeah.
But the board here, the committee here wouldn't be, may not be privy to it, the background information on it, where a little more for us would be helpful, at least for me. Thank you.
Ed?
Ken, this was purely an impression when I read it, and I'm looking at Exhibit A for the third quarter resolution. And there, as you pointed out, there's some fairly large numbers. For instance, $123,000 in the city manager's account. So the previous city manager must have had a fairly large payout. Is that true?
It's a matter of opinion on what large is, but
Okay.
It was significant.
Okay. But that also includes the consultant that the city council used for...
No, we had actually made previously
That was someplace else.
yeah, and that was about 26,000.
Yeah, something like that. Okay. I just got the impression that we had some projects that went over, several. For instance, where did I find this thing? Oyster Point drainage, golf course accounts as overage. Are these just accounts that I'm just get slightly concerned that I started seeing things being over. Did that bother you at all, or am I?
I see those too when we're drafting those reports, and usually it's related to a project that's partially funded with grant funds, and we tend to not want to show the revenue budget for grant monies until we actually have the paperwork in order. Even though we might create the project and go ahead and appropriate the matching dollars, if we haven't yet put the official documents or received the official documents and made the entries to adjust the budget for that account, even though we know it's coming, we've got verbal approvals or whatever. In other words, we're waiting for them to dot their I's and cross their T's, and maybe that's unnecessary, and some of those entries could go ahead and be made. Certainly before we proceed with spending the money, we definitely would have hopefully enough confidence to know we're going to get the money, so why not go ahead and make the entry to assume that?
If you're not worried, I'm not worried. I just brought it up.
Not that there's not room for improvement. We're constantly working on this, and part of it's been the number of the projects and the detailed accounting that we go through to keep track of them all. So back to our original goal is to reduce the number of projects, which we say every year, and Nancy can attest to that. Every year we say if we had less projects, we could do a better job of accounting for them, but we are aware that, but I'm not feeling uncomfortable that there's gonna be something that's gonna create an issue for the city, so,
Okay. If you're happy, as I said, I'm happy.
well, thank you.
Let's see, let me just check these. No, I guess I'm all set. Thank you.
Bruce?
Yes, Ken. Well, obviously, the police pension contribution drew my attention. Have a couple of questions related to that. Has the return objective been lowered to the 7% level yet, or is it still up?
We are down to the 7.3% level, I think was the low end that we gradually were gonna go down from what was.
No, I'm trying to remember. I know that was several years ago, but there was a
But-
plan to reduce that down.
We've lowered the assumption, but
Okay.
yet it's still been an issue to even meet those lower assumptions. Now, we have diversified. I know this was a discussion when you were on the board about having additional money managers and having investments concentrated in different security areas to protect ourselves from changes by having too much in one pot. So we've implemented those changes, and looking at the current year activities since we made those changes and trying to watch the investment managers in each of those disciplines.
Well, that's a whole, yeah.
It
we can
appears
spend-
it's looking better, and then maybe we'll make those targets now.
We could spend 2 hours on this. Just one other question. Do you think we should increase next year's budget with the idea that the contribution... I know we budget the amount that's in the that comes with the actuarial projection requirement, and I guess that's all you can do.
Well,
And
part
we're
of what we
just-
have-
And we're just gonna be exposed to the true-up figure when it comes in.
And that's, I mean, there's, as you know, the assumptions include the rate of return, they include the amount of turnover.
Yeah.
We compensate somewhat when we have like additional personnel, like we do in this case being
Yeah, we're
recommended.
adding personnel to the police department. Have we,
But we also add, because we calculate, when we add that salary for the new personnel, we calculate the percentage that's being applied to the current staff and add in, you know, the expectation of their contribution. So it should, in better investment return environments, I don't know how else to say it, but as we get closer to meeting those investment assumptions, I think we would be perfectly fine in just keeping our same methodology.
yeah, again, we can talk about this for 2 or 3 hours. Okay, I'll make my normal concern on the golf course. I'm just looking at the numbers through 6/30, and it's incredible how our 3-year trend is in the wrong direction with the reserve account, so enough said. Call it what it is. It's a supported activity, and it should be in the general fund.
Nancy?
Yes, I have a note here, and I don't have my backup, that the golf course administration was at 98% of their budget right now. Did something happen there? And I don't have my backup, and maybe my notes are wrong. Bruce, help me with it. I don't know. That's what I'm... And I don't have that sheet on the backup. I must have pulled it out for some reason.
No, I'm seeing it, but
Is there something?
Let me turn the mic on before I get yelled at. Yeah, administration expenses are almost 110% of budget as of 6:30.
I was just curious if there was something going on out there that caused that, or was that just normal expenses? Why would that be at this point?
Like I said, maybe that's why that trend looks so bad. Well,
Were any of
I
those
just looked at-
expenditures redoing the kitchen carried in the administration budget for some reason? Or was that all capitalized? Because I noticed when I looked at your capital sheet, we spent something like $36,000 more than we actually had budgeted in there.
When we created the project, we pretty much closed that project out, though, after the restaurant was occupied, and we said, okay, we're done.
All right.
But there have been some additional expenses that have shown up that, once we had closed out that project, we took to the administrative budget, but...
Is that
Frank?
is the clubhouse reconstruction on the project sheet, is that the golf course?
The restaurant golf,
Well, it just says clubhouse reconstruction.
yes, that refers to,
Yeah,
And
that's
it's
the golf course.
$76,000 over budget. It's showing there was a $50,000 grant, but where is the rest of that money going to be coming from?
I'm sorry, that did show up on the renewal and replacement account, general fund supplemented that for those items that included like the hallway, where they came in and they redid the bathrooms in the hallway. They
So
did,
if we made the adjustment for it, why is it still showing over budget $76,000?
oh, yeah, I see exactly what you're talking about. That R&R seat, the only thing that's showing is the $185,000 from DST funds and the $50,000 from the grant funds. We have not added the R&R contribution in there, and that is a good catch.
Okay, so the money has been deducted from the R&R to cover this, but it's just not showing on the,
Yes, in fact,
So that would reduce the administrative expenses?
not
No,
really, because
that
that's
wouldn't
the
affect it.
administrative expenses is part of the operating budget for the golf course.
Yeah.
There's something else going on there that I'll have
Yeah,
to
we're
look-
what is it, 170?
Well, it's it's showing a budget
Well, we're
overage
about
after,
$70,000.
but that's over after three.
Yeah, after
Three quarters, so-
Yeah, well, the budget's already spent, right?
Yes, I'll have to look further into that. But where we show you the breakdown of the use of general fund cash reserves, there was a adjustment. I'm trying to find it here on the, should have been read at September 30th. Right, there was another, at September 30th, we moved $71,583 from the general fund R&R to cover the costs that had been incurred on the golf course clubhouse that were
so that
considered.
project should only be showing $5,000 over budget, or?
I think I see another transfer here, though.
I guess my question is that project over budget?
No.
Okay.
No,
Can we make a joke? It's a golf course, of course it is.
No, I think there could be an issue with the administrative budget being over.
Yes.
But as far as the project, I think it's just the paperwork catching up with the listing.
That's all I had.
Okay. The only question I had was when you changed the assumption on the police pension fund, what did you put the earnings estimate at? What is that? What did the board put that at?
My recollection is that we the first year we went down to 760, the next year we went down to 745, and I think we now last year settled on 7.3.
Yeah, I think I remember. I think when I first started, we were at 8 and we went to 775, and then we decided 775 wasn't enough and we were moving to
Well, we wanted-
towards
yeah.
7.25, but
We
to
didn't, we
move
didn't want the
that-
shell
to
shock of
move it
changing in 1 year.
even increments, I think we said it would go to 7.3.
Yes.
Yeah.
And supposedly the way, not to make this a pension board meeting, but the way the consultant recommended the breakdown of how much is allocated in each discipline was predicated on attaining that 7.3% return, you know, by having some things that should expect a higher return, be able to live with some things that are maybe more safe, but a lesser return, but all
According
balanced
to your
out.
audit, we haven't hit that rate of return in several years.
No.
So it's actually been too high.
Well, that was
And
the
of course, when
purpose,
you lower
that was the
that-
purpose of lowering it, because
Right.
the interest rate environment is so low.
When you lower
you-
that,
you
what that
can't
means
reach
is
that.
the city's gonna have to cough up more money
You
because the
got
amount the
it, and
employees
that
put
was
in is
always my
fixed.
concern, it was we're not putting enough money in.
Yeah.
And it won't be funded.
Well, I
And
just think they had their-
eventually, the rooster's gonna come home and he's gonna crow.
I just think they had their rate of return a little high, but it's actually funded each year. It's pretty well funded.
It's
When I
funded
look
as
at the
required
audit
by the
numbers.
state,
Police
yes.
pension's pretty well funded. I saw
Well,
nothing
again,
there.
I'll go back to Ken's comment when Ed asked him if it was a large payout, and I'll go, there's a definition of funded and what, that can be debated too.
Well, funded is an actuarial number. So that was all I had. Staff matters, Ken, anything else you need to tell us about?
Nothing to add, no. Thank you.
How about our minute taker? You have any suggestions? You're fine? Good. Board member matters, comments, discussions by individual committee members not already discussed. Nancy, we'll start with you.
If we do come up with suggestions on what we would like to see, can we just email you or get a hold of you since we don't have another meeting coming?
No, I would be happy just to consider individual board members coming to me and either emailing me or discussing it with me. I'm just looking for ideas or a concept that maybe can do a better
Well, it'd be hard
report.
for us to make any significant change without meeting as a committee because there's no way we could vote on it. So if we don't have any more meetings scheduled,
We can make
Maybe
suggestions
comments
to
or
Ken that he
suggestions,
could
right.
bring back to us
and then
next
if
year.
there's enough of those, then we could always call another, or depending on what the council does.
Chances are good that I'm probably going to, we've got one more quarter of this year, and with everything going on, I think it's doubtful that in the 4 quarters of this year will be a change format. I'm really looking at ways we can maybe set it up to begin next year. And I definitely would consider your comment there as far as, and that's what I want to do is maybe draft up a sample of what a new report might look like and what it
Right.
might include and have some discussion on it.
Well, I'd be glad to work with you on that,
Thank you.
and I'm sure Paul would too. That it, Nancy? Bruce? Ed? Nope. Harry?
I just want to say it was a pleasure again, working with everyone this year and with your staff, Ken. And if I'm on the board next year, I hope to, or the committee, sorry, I keep calling it the board. The committee, I'd like to first bring up with the committee members as to how they view working on the budget for the next year. I know there's 2 ways of looking at a budget. One, staff brings the information to us, and we look at it and see if we think there's enough money to fund it and if it's appropriate. And the other way is if there are things that the staff does not put in the budget that the committee feels that should be added or taken out, that we act on a recommendation that way. So that's something I'd like to put out there just for food for thought for maybe going forward. But again, I think it went really smooth this year, and I think this is a very good budget. Thank you.
Thanks, Harry. Andrea?
Nothing, thank you.
And I would like to say as chairman, I'd like to thank the staff and our minute taker and especially the committee for all their work to put on this. And I agree it was a very concise project, and I think we got a lot accomplished in a few meetings. We were even able to cancel 1 meeting. And I see that the next meeting is we have none scheduled for the current committee. So I think I thank you all for your service, and I'm sure the city does. And being no further comments, this meeting is adjourned.